So thank you all very much for joining us for this panel discussion around CIO and CISO and vendor relationship evolution in 2021. My name is Jason Senemal. I am the Chief Product Officer here at SINC USA. I am joined by an absolutely fantastic panel of experts today, of which I'll introduce to you shortly. But first and foremost, just to kind of set the tone for the discussion, wanted to just reiterate the importance of this particular session. Obviously, 2020 was a crazy year for lots, and many organizations and technology leaders were forced to amend their roadmaps in order to combat the impact on the global pandemic. This inevitably placed a heightened focus on the need for technology providers to set aside traditional processes of trying to serve legacy goals and instead become true advisory partners and drive strategic outcomes. For technology providers, having the latest, coolest tech no longer guarantees success. And as such, CIOs and CISOs alike are obviously redefining what does successful relationships with their IT partners looks like. So as I mentioned, I am joined by an absolutely fantastic panel today. You guys are in for a real treat, some really fantastic minds in the room. Starting with Mr. Robert Strickland, the CEO of M37 Ventures. Hello there, Rob.
Good day, Jason. Good to see you. Good to talk to you.
Likewise, sir. Thank you for joining. Dwayne Omnia, the VP of Digital Security at T-Mobile. Hi there, Dwayne.
Good morning, everyone. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you and providing the voice of the security space here. Thank you very much. And last, but certainly by no means least, Mr. Ken Piddington, VP and CIO at US Silica Company. Hello there, Ken.
Hi, Jason. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure indeed. Pleasure is all mine. So let's jump straight in here, guys. As I mentioned, 2020 kind of changed the landscape a little bit. Obviously, with the massive impact the pandemic had on the economy and organizations, revenue, et cetera, budgets inevitably, when it comes to technology purchasing, we're starting to get a little bit more scrutinized, making sure that the dollars went a little bit further and that return on investment was clear for all to see. As part of that came the need for vendors to change their approach in some instances on how they were looking to work and help with their clients' IT roadmaps, and also the expectations of IT and security leaders alike in making sure that they avoid shiny object syndrome. So I want to start by just going around each of you, allow you to give a bit more of a robust introduction to yourselves than I ever could, and ask each of you the same question. How have the events of 2020 changed the expectations of IT and security leaders when it comes to vendor partnerships? So I'm just going to, with the aesthetics of my screen, start with Dwayne. Dwayne, tell me a little bit about how last year kind of has changed your approach at T-Mobile and your vendor relationships in general.
Well, first and foremost, I think all of us were pretty pleased to, at least from a symbolic standpoint,
And there we go. Another impact of 2020 is virtual events, folks, and sometimes connectivity issues. So until Dwayne gets back in the room, let me go to Mr. Ken Piddington. Ken, if you could actually provide your input.
Of our size and shape.
Go on, Ken. You're good. You're good. Kick on.
For a company of our size and shape, being a $100 million company, or $100 billion value company, the 110 million customers, the scope and scale of what we have to do is tremendous. And when you introduce a pandemic, you introduce the situations around America with social injustice and those types of things, that forced everybody to pivot, inclusive of our vendors. And I don't like to call them vendors, candidly. There are partners, there are suppliers. They're extensions of our team. But, I think it helped really for us to forge a more honest relationship with our partners because we were all on a level playing field dealing with the same challenges. And it was all about how do we support our workforce, how do we support our customers, and how do we keep the lights on, pardon the expression. It did push the security envelope, as many would expect. It has been a challenge to all of a sudden one day have all of your corporate employees and assets behind the proverbial firewall and perimeter to all of a sudden everybody's working from some remote location coming in to you from various over various media apparatus, and that was something that I take great pride in as an organization. We were able to pivot very quickly to both enable retail storefront as well as our customer service arms of the business to effectively operate in these critical situations, in these challenging times, remotely. So it was a day and night, activity that we took on over a 2 to 3 week period, but something that we're very proud of. I also think it changed our overall corporate culture and view on remote work for the positive. It was something that in years past, you felt like a lot of the decisions, a lot of the center of excellence had to be at a corporate campus or at some location. This really pushed the boundaries, and honestly, we did a significant merger and acquisition with Sprint, as many of you all probably realize, from our second bedroom, basement, office, armchair, right? And so it was a tremendous time for us, and we've been very successful because of it. That's not to make light of the significant impacts to businesses and customers and employees across the industry. We've had to be very sensitive to, helping others through this tough time. And so I guess I would just say that it's really brought out a much more, pardon the expression, human aspect to our business versus buying widgets and software and doing deals. It's really leveled the playing field from a partner and customer supply perspective. So that's what I would offer up, Jason, is some of the key components from my viewpoint.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, sir. Kim Piddington, same question to you. Talk to us a little bit about how 2020 changed the expectation in your perspective, in your opinion.
Sure. Thank you, Jason. So Ken Piddington, I'm the VP and CIO US Silica. We're a 120-year-old mining, processing, and logistics company based in the Houston, Texas area with operations all over North America, sales and distribution globally. For me, 2020 was crazy, as Dwayne was just explaining, everyone going through things for the pandemic. But from a vendor community and partnership perspective, my expectations didn't really change. I had expectations of these partnerships and good relationships with our vendor community all along. But what really did change, both for our security vendors and others, was that those efforts that we put in previously really paid off in 2020 because the need for a stronger partnership showed itself. We, much like many other companies, had to go through some difficult decisions and reduce staff and close down some of our operations. And that meant going back to our vendor community because we needed to figure out ways to conserve cash. Things were tight. And being able to sometimes renegotiate deals based on reduction in user counts was something we had to work with. And those relationships, those strong partnerships we had built previously, I think enabled that to happen more seamlessly as we went through it. The other part to it is you move to the immediate work from home. And we had an 850% increase overnight in remote workforce at our organization and VPN usage. So that meant new ways to look at how we were securing our environment, where we were not inside our four walls and worried about that perimeter. It was people were everywhere and on the home Wi-Fi with 2 kids doing schoolwork and all sorts of other activities going on. It accelerated some of the things we already had on our security strategy and made us think differently. So again, those partnerships that we had built earlier enabled us to shift gears a little bit, get aggressive in some of the needs we had that really weren't as, we were planning them for later on, that we needed to, shift gears, get those partners to help us accelerate the implementation of those. And that was true on the security side as well as in other areas. And I have a story where we had a dispatch group that was designed for a company we had acquired to be working in an office. 15 desks, these guys all around the big table. So the phone rang centrally, rang to everybody. And suddenly to put them remote, how did we function in that way? I needed to totally revamp a phone system for them. But one of my partners came right to us and said, hey, you know you're going to remote. How can we help? This is what we're already doing. Knew what we already had structured, brought a solution to the table that we were able to implement very quickly in 3 days. That wouldn't have happened if we didn't have that relationship, that two-way strong relationship. So I think it wasn't that it changed expectations, it accelerated the partnerships and reinforced the need for the work up front in order to create the value in this difficult time of 2020.
Fantastic, thank you very much. And Mr. Strickland, really interested to get your insight here, because obviously, you know, at M37 Ventures, you guys work very, very closely with CIOs and CISOs of all shapes and sizes, and understand their deep-rooted needs and challenges, and get them exposed to a lot of the vendors out there who can obviously facilitate in those areas. So talk to me a little bit about what you saw kind of in that in-between role, so to speak.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and as you just pointed out too, M37, we kind of started this company as kind of the glue between the CIOs, the IT executives, and the supplier community. In some ways, because we sort of saw the need that the buyers and the sellers just needed some people to kind of have that Sherpa or communication or translation. So it really changed though the last year, I would say. We kind of started out the year in a traditional way, as everyone did, kind of thinking about the way that the workforce security or supplier relations would unfold. And then of course, pandemic hit and everything changed. Even our business changed. In fact, I think a lot of the key suppliers that we partnered with started to figure out how to maintain the relationships that they had, and a lot of relationship selling and a lot of that goodwill, I think, carried over for quite a while into the pandemic. But of course, I think some of those gas tanks, if you will, have now kind of started running on fumes. We also have seen a lot of introduction of new technologies, you know, maybe Kubernetes security or other forms of security that come in, and you know, the bad guys. I got a little Scooby-Doo in the background because, you know, we all love watching Scooby-Doo, and we always know like every episode is a bad actor, and you know, those darn teenagers, you know, they catch them. We're not catching the bad guys, right? The bad guys are just finding new ways to come at us, and so we've seen really a lot of pressure, and I think that the IT community has done an unbelievable job kind of coming into play and helping, as Dwayne pointed out, like doing huge mergers from the basement, you know, and with sometimes limited bandwidth and competing with kids in school. It's just dogs barking. You know, we've really seen a lot of pressure, and the suppliers now that are coming to us are starting, even the ones that have been around for a long time, whether you're an incumbent or you're just, you know, freshly coming out of Israel with some unbelievable security platform, you're trying to get those relationships and connections, and it's really hard. You know, we have these kinds of platforms, but let's face it, I mean, raise your hand if you love Zoom, or, you know, all the hours and hours of video fatigue that we've gone through. So but one of the things that I'm kind of thinking about now is we're maybe coming out of this. I mean, maybe we're kind of seeing a little bit of light at the tunnel, and isn't so much now what's in the rearview mirror, because I think we did really well. I'm starting to wonder what's going to happen in the future. How are we going to kind of bridge the gap into now what is going to morph and what will be this kind of hybrid? Because I have a feeling people are going to snap right back into some form of cadence that what we're used to. I think human beings do a lot better in person, but we still do a lot, you know, from remote. But the next airplane I'm on, if the pilot decides to work from home, I don't think I'm going anywhere. I don't think it can still fly a Southwest Airlines on Zoom, but maybe someone will try that. But yeah, you know, I think Jason, I think we're going to see some really interesting morphine and further pressure. And I think for the security teams, it's going to be, I mean, just when we think we kind of got it nailed down, more stuff is going to come at us. You know, more of these bad actors are going to kind of, you know, evolve, and the pressures are going to be on all of us to perform. And you know, we got to be ready for it. And we haven't slept, so you know, so a boil of coffee. I think we're going to be ready for a pretty interesting 2021.
Definitely. I mean, hey, we can at least put an Oculus Quest headset on and fly virtually somewhere, right? May not actually get the warmth of the sunshine on the coast, but you might be able to see it. and imagine it. But thank you very much for that insight. And really just, I want to stay along this line, right? Because you mentioned about the IT and security leader community. You mentioned about bad actors. So Dwayne, would love to get your perspective on how the IT and security leadership community can really work together away from obviously any obvious, confidential or financial information, to build a bit more of a formidable alliance to compete against these bad actors.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we need to all do in the security community is level up our program. I think that, and what I mean by that is it's more of a business imperative these days. And I think many parts of other industries have figured that out, but it's not a technology only solution. It hasn't been for years. We've got to do a better job about transparently communicating both to our suppliers, our vendor partners, and our lines of business, what our risks and opportunities are, so that we can collectively prioritize and go address them. I think the days of some of the challenges with this that I've seen is just it starts with reporting structure. Oftentimes you'll find your security teams are embedded in your IT teams. And no offense to my partners on the call here that are of the CIO leadership team, but the challenge is that gets filtered, that message up gets filtered. And so, it's not a back office technology solution set. It's really about getting security to be part of the DNA and the fabric of what the rest of the business is trying to go execute. And when I talk to others in the industry, it's about figuring out how to get a partnership, get a relationship. I mean, it sounds really simple, but basically all of this starts with forging a relationship with your key stakeholders across technology, across the business landscape, and making sure that they understand that you're there to help, that you're their trusted advisor, and then providing them the data so that they can make informed decisions as to where they want to go and where they see opportunities to disrupt the marketplace, or where they see opportunities to go into a new area of business. And then collectively, like I said, working together to ensure we achieve those business objectives. At the end of the day, it's about being an equal partner across the table with our business partners, right? And being part of that strategy and that go forward plan, not an afterthought of, hey, we decided to go this direction, now go fix what pieces and parts behind. As we're driving the car down the road at 100 miles an hour, the transmission's falling apart, and you guys in security need to figure out how to pick that up and put it back together. So I see that changing across our industry, and land is definitely changing for us, and it has to, because again, it's about a collective engagement across our business to really fight against the malicious actor. I mean, we've got to be right 100% of the time. They've only got to be successful once. And I know everybody hears that in our business, but it's true. And it's nonstop. I mean, the onslaught is just continuous. They're sitting around figuring out ways to pivot and get into our infrastructure and get into our business in ways that we might not have even realized yet. And so trying to be much more proactive, understanding we're still going to have to be responsive and effective in our detection and prevention pieces of the puzzle. But that said, I mean, I know it sounds overly simplistic, Jason, but it really is about relationships for me. Once you start having those candid conversations with your business stakeholders and they get it, and you talk to them in business speak, not in widgets and plumbing and pieces and ones and zeros, you talk to them in risks, you talk to them in financial opportunities, they start to see you as a business partner. And at that point, then the conversation quickly changes.
Really? Yeah. And, I happen to know, for example, a member of the SINC community here, the CISO of the state of Arizona, Tim Roma, he's spoken a lot about how a lot of the different IT and security leaders from the States often share information with one another. They have a community together where they will talk about vendors very openly with one another, talk about different partners, etc., and experiences they've had and what might work, etc. And I think those communities are key. Now, continuing along this kind of a little bit of a theme of security here, obviously we were exposed to information about a pretty major breach of information recently in the SolarWinds escapade. Ken, I'd really love to get your perspective here, on what that breach really means for companies and vendor management, and the steps to take, I suppose, in order to mitigate similar incidents happening in the future.
Yeah, well, I don't have all the answers to that. I tell you what we've done, and I'm happy to say we were not a customer impacted by that. But I think it really opened up people's eyes, or hopefully it's opening up people's eyes to think a little bit differently here. We've all gone out and purchased so many products, and what's inside that product is a black box. Our vendor is really sharing the secret sauce behind what goes on there. So we have to trust what's there. I think with the breach for SolarWinds, really puts an additional onus on your security teams to what we are doing to detect an issue, how we're going about recovery. So I think we've had to elevate that. The next step, and I think this goes back to that community feel of, as you were mentioning, the different groups out there in your regions that's sharing ideas and information, and hopefully can band together on this. I think there's going to be a different expectation of our vendor community where we purchase products from to put that seal of stamp on their stuff to certify that they don't have a similar issue to SolarWinds. And I think it's also going to increase some of the language that we're looking to do in our contracts from a risk management perspective. That's going to have to go in there to help protect us from these types of breaches. I think there's a lot to happen here in the near future. It's one I've been thinking about quite a bit, well beyond SolarWinds. Why couldn't it happen to any other of the 100+ different companies that are products that are sitting in and around our environment, or the rest of the ecosystem of service providers who are using this tool and that tool, and we have no direct visibility to. So I think it's really going to change part of the conversation you have to have with your vendors. I think the communities from a security perspective need to come together and stand together with the vendor community of saying, we need this type of validation and we need this type of work from you to help ensure that black box that we're purchasing truly is doing what it's supposed to be doing and is free of these potential malicious code that we saw happen in the SolarWinds. I think there's a lot more to come, but at a minimum, teams have to up their risk management around their vendors, enhance their detection capabilities, and enhance their recovery abilities for responding to this type of issue.
Jason, can I add just something to what Kim was saying? So, I agree. The attestation or validation of components like Kim was mentioning is critically important. But one of the gaps that we've seen time in and time again is just that we do a real good job up front of validating and accrediting at the onset of a relationship. And then we don't do a lot until we get to recertification or review of contract or engagement of services with partner X, right? And I think we need to do a better job in that middle spot. I think that's one of the things that we've seen as a community is how do you have more of a continuous monitoring, engagement, dialogue with your supply partners so that you're all in the same ecosystem. You're all trying to do the same thing, and that's to keep the bad actors at bay. So I think that's one of the things that we've found. I mean, specific to SolarWinds, we too were not impacted, knock on wood, thankfully. But I would say there was actually a positive example there where there was a real aggressive engagement by some of our core strategic partners to pull us into conversations, to be very transparent with the information they had at the time as this was unfolding. That allowed us to take those indicators of compromise and really quickly pivot and apply those and look across our enterprise and protect our customers as well. And so that was something that I found very refreshing In years past, that hasn't been the case. You know, you'd have this long delay between identified issue and reported out to the industry or the ecosystem. This one was very timely. Now, again, it was a lot of ad hoc conference calls and everybody get on a bridge, right? But and I think that there's ways that we can get better at that in sharing information.
And we've lost Dwayne a little bit there as well, just with some connectivity issues. Give it a couple of secs, see if he can finish his thought. No? Okay, fantastic. No worries. Well, thank you very much, Dwayne. We missed the end part there. If you can just repeat what you were saying right at the very end, you just your connection.
Sorry about that. I said it was a very positive example of how quickly we can share information across partners in industry to protect our business and our customers.
Definitely. I'm glad we got that closing remark there, because that's an important element. Rob, I'd love to get your thoughts. So we've spoken a little bit about, you know, the IT and security leader community and, you know, how they can band together to demand more really from their partners. But from your perspective, in the experience that you have, I mean, in what way should vendors themselves be evolving their strategies to better understand the needs of their existing and prospective customers? I mean, we know that inevitably, you know, vendors will want to roll out the latest, greatest update to their software, whatever it may be. We know that last year, a lot of folks were kind of tasked with getting the most out of their legacy systems because in a lot of cases, budgets were slashed. So talk to me a little about how the vendors can really play their part in understanding the needs and challenges of their potential customers.
Well, I think this is going to be, I think, the difficulty right now, just in terms of the pandemic, right? It's just how do you really kind of get close to customers? And certainly, you know, we're doing the best we can to try to create those exchanges and opportunities and learnings. And something actually that Dwayne and I talked about is just how do we actually build, you know, those use cases and opportunities for this, you know, key suppliers to learn more about what's going on. And everything's turned on its head. So, you know, we get a lot of inbound calls and ask for, you know, situations like this with what you're doing with SINC is how do we get more of these kinds of forums together, you know, lunch and learns, if you will, and really kind of expand. The problem is when, like, even these forums, we'll have, like, I'm looking right now, we probably have like 32 people on here, but, you know, it's like, how do you actually have a dialogue with people that are, you know, over, you know, talking over each other, and then you have the problem of everybody's kind of spread out all over the place. So it really is a particular problem that we're kind of trying to pursue here, especially when you have nascent technologies coming in and you're trying to figure out how those technologies can be deployed. And you have these hungry salespeople, obviously, that are being pushed by their companies with quota and just really trying to, you know, go get sales. And then you have product roadmaps that need to evolve to understand, like, where the threats are. What's the threat landscape? How wide is that? Like, what's really going on? And how can those roadmaps evolve? And so, you know, it's a particular problem, and it's one that I don't know that I have a real answer, other than we're trying to find every way we can to expose our partners and our customers and our friends and our allies. My former peer group is something I feel really strongly about, is try to create these connections, because those connections and that learning will lift really our tide up, so that now we can float a little bit higher than the bad guys and be a little bit more resilient. I just worry that, you know, there's just a lot of fatigue out there. Like, over the last year, the amount of threats that teams have gone after, and then at the same time say, look, you just spent like from 2 a.m. to 8 a.m. going through some sort of threat, and now somebody wants to talk to you about a next generation product, or, you know, get 2 hours of your time, and you're like, wait, I haven't even had breakfast yet. And, you know, so we're talking about these teams have just been through a lot, and it's still coming. So we're really trying to kind of weigh this out a little bit. How do we do this? And again, I don't have the answers, but I would say we have a lot of inbound right now. A lot of companies are seeking our help and counsel. I do like this sort of idea of creating these kind of frenemies groups, right? Where you kind of have to, like, leave your weapons at the door, because, you know, what we're trying to do is we're trying to collaborate. We're trying to understand what's happening, what that threat profile looks like, the landscape, if you will, and then how we can kind of work together to understand how we kind of band together, maybe in groups or in markets or in verticals. And that's really hard to do because there's still this chase of IT budget or the security budget, and which certainly makes the world go around. But I do think, though, one of the positive outcomes has been increase in security spend and awareness, especially at the C level and at the board. And so companies that I'm on boards or advisory, I can tell you the amount of energy now spent around that board table and C level around this topic is much greater than it was. The allocation of dollars are there. It's not perfect, right? I think Dwayne would like more, and so would Ken. I mean, we all want more budget to spend, but I do think we have this really particular problem right now of matching buyers and sellers together and sort of birds of a feather that we can actually figure out what's going on and then a way to problem solve. That roadmap is really particularly important for customers to give feedback. So we have an understanding of what's happening, but look, we don't know where the Achilles heel is, right? We don't know where it's coming at us next. I mean, it's kind of like that whole Jeep hack that happened. I think it came through like the tire, right? The pressure gauge, if I remember right. You never know where that vulnerability is.
Well said. No, and to your point, this is a conversation that we've had at plenty SINC forums, roundtables, the importance of the alignment of security in the business and security and IT in the business. And we've certainly seen the business waking up a little bit more to the needs of this. Okay, we can't just kind of react if it happens. We need to put preventative measures in place. And to your point around budgets, security, Dwayne, typically 5% of 5% falls in the security lap. Yeah, we've heard people talking about increases there, which is fantastic to see. So it's good that it's getting the attention it requires. Now,
but also one other thing too, Jason, I think Dwayne pointed out something that's really critical. The organizational structure and where security sits organizationally is just as important as funding, if probably not more, just really driving the overall capability of security. And we've advised a couple companies over the last year where they really wanted to go a traditional route and hire a CISO and put them in more of a traditional role. And we were dead set against it, really trying to move it much more to a strategic level, and implementation execution can happen in different layers, but that role needs to be much more independent and have a lot of teeth in it. Sorry to jump in.
No, well said. Well said. Thank you for doing so. Now, Ken, some actually watching this may already know, because I know it's been featured in a few industry articles, etc. I know that you've spent considerable amount of time putting together a pretty robust strategic partner program. I think it's a great opportunity really just to share some insight into kind of what you put in place and the rewards you're reaping as a result of this, because it seems like you guys have got a pretty good handle on things there.
Yeah, and it has. It's a program I've put in place multiple times. It really stems, each time I've taken on a new CIO role, you get bombarded with what I refer to as negative event-driven relationships. And it's not what I want to have. And what I mean by that is you're coming in new to an organization, you're meeting your team, you're looking at your vendor community, and they all want to meet you because they all want to sell you that new shiny box, or you're dealing with your vendor community because there's a problem. Those two things to me are negative. I don't want you to sell me something because you have a shiny box on the shelf. I want you to partner with me at the right time to figure out what we need when we need it, not just the next latest and greatest shiny object. And I don't want to only know you because something got screwed up, it isn't working. So that combined with each organization, you've got your mandates of where you've got to go. And face it, none of our teams are big enough. Our budgets aren't to do it all on our own. We need our vendor communities to help us get to wherever our organization is trying to go and deliver the right type of value to reach the outcomes we're trying to reach. And so that spurred my strategic partner program. I need a community of our vendors that really desired to be partners with us, to get rid of the negative event-driven relationship.